Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Paul Lowinger, and I run the solution consulting team for Titan Cloud. And so that team really spends time with customers and prospects to really understand what are you trying to do strategically to drive your business? What are some of your challenges? How can Titan Cloud key capabilities address those challenges, and what's the value? So that's what my team does. And what I want to do is introduce a series of webinars that we're going to present. This is one of three. The series is called The Future of Filling Up, Faster, Easier, and Frictionless. And this is session one, the first webinar of that series. And it's entitled Eliminating Pain Points at the Pump for Your Customers. What I'd like to do is introduce two members of my team. They both come out of industry. Brent Puzak has spent 25 years with a major retailer, and that's really across several thousand stores, and he worked in the environmental services department. And then Jeff Sexton has spent 20 years in the logistics and transportation company, leading their environmental compliance department across several hundred locations. So who is Titan Cloud? If you haven't heard of us, it's really, we manage risk and fuel profit with our unique fuel asset optimization platform. And so what this means is we, through connectivity, visibility, and control of all of your fuel assets and operations. And when we do this, we were able to really increase revenue so that throughput across every throughput from terminal all the way through pump, as well as reducing costs, specifically operating costs throughout your supply chain, all while staying compliant. And we've done this since 2012. And so across the US, we have well over 50% market share and well over 700 customers globally. And when we think about where do we play in this space, it's really across the entire space. So very large enterprise C-stores. So you see a lot of some key marquee logos here, as well as international C-stores, so very global enterprises, as well as small and medium-sized businesses. So they start and deploy our platform to really accelerate their growth. We also provide capabilities to fleets, whether that's UPS, Avis, Hertz, but also equipment and service providers. So as you can see, we're really servicing the entire market space that we work within. But why is this environment complex and challenging? And the reason is because a typical C-store, your enterprise consists of a number of different departments that you're trying to collaborate and work together, as well as outside third parties that you're trying to work with. And it's a very disconnected process and environment. So something as simple as you've got nozzle down. So even if you have visibility to the fact that you have nozzle down, which many times is not real time. So it takes several days to understand that you've got nozzle down. But you've got equipment that's down. It's synchronizing and coordinating with maintenance and facilities to repair that equipment and then close that loop. And it may also involve third parties as well. These processes across people, process, and technology is completely disconnected today. That's what makes it very complex. Titan Cloud goes to market with one platform that really manages all of this complexity, everywhere from logistics, managing fuel, compliance, and maintenance. And so now you're able to, in one platform, collaborate and synchronize the flow of information and activities and product all the way from terminal to pump. More specifically around frictionless fueling, we provide a platform that has multiple solutions. And so it starts with improving the customer experience, which we'll talk more about today, but also decreasing inventory variance. And more importantly, the root causes that contribute to variance. So we will isolate exactly where do you have variance and why do you have variance. as well as reducing runouts, which ultimately lower fuel costs. And so, for example, reducing the frequency and duration of pump issues by identifying tank shutdowns, which we talked about earlier, nozzle unavailability, slow flow rates by dispenser. So in real time, we're able to identify these issues and surface them up and provide insight across our platform. Reducing inventory variance and better detect fuel anomalies, so all of those root causes. But it starts with having a much more accurate tank chart. And so with that fine-grained tank chart, now we're able to reduce fuel write-offs significantly. And then also the failure rates related to those variances. And then ultimately minimize the number of dispatches, because now you are working on real issues, and we're able to reduce the amount of time it takes to investigate those issues and then resolve those issues. Reducing the frequency and duration of fuel runouts. So this starts with really providing a very accurate forecast to your carriers along with your drivers, and then dispatching, creating orders and dispatching across your carriers, internal drivers as well as carriers, but then also managing the performance of these members, and then managing allocations as you go through those processes. And then we give real-time connectivity and visibility into the ATGs, and we're surfacing any issues that are resonant there. I'd like to introduce Brent, who will go through in a lot more detail how Titan Cloud provides value in each of these areas.
Yep, thanks, Paul. Good afternoon, everyone. Like Paul has talked about, right? Titan is a very broad platform, and that, just looking at the individuals participating in the webinar, we've got, current customers, opportunities that are out there, service sector that's out there as well. So today we're really going to be focusing on the title of this webinar is eliminating the pain points in the pumps for your customers. So those are really events around flow rate events where it's impacting the flow of fuel from the tanks to your dispensers, and equipment downtime, which may be nozzle downs or alarm conditions that are causing shutdowns in the system. And we're gonna start off by just kind of giving you an overview of kind of the state of the industry and what we kind of see across customers today, and then summarize everything with how you might be able to optimize this technology to get more throughput to your location. So Jeff and I are going to kind of co-host here just to kind of tie in and share additional insights as we go through these additional areas. And he's going to be asking some questions as we're going through some survey questions that we're hoping that you guys will participate in, give us some additional insights, and that way we can dive a little bit deeper into. So Jeff, I think you might have one on this very first one to start off with. Yeah. So if you guys kind of think about the state of the industry, we talk to people and companies day in and day out. We look at a lot of data that comes through the platform as a whole, and participate in a lot of additional events across the nation. And even globally. And one of the things that we see is that overall marketers are seeing a decrease in the overall amount of gallons that they're seeing flow through their locations, right? And that throughput is really diminishing for a lot of factors, right? You've got the net zero carbon emissions standards that are really requiring vehicles to drive longer distances before they fill up. You've got the EV segment that's been competitive in a lot of different ways. So there's a lot of impacts that are happening on throughput that are really critical for marketers to look at ways to improve the overall throughput at their location. So today we're going to talk about technology that allows you to gain additional visibility to your locations, and factors such as the flow rate and the nozzle down experiences. And then the other aspect of this is the increased maintenance costs, right? Where organizations are paying excessive cost or potentially excessive cost for either internal techs or third-party contractors to go out and service those locations where they may not have good information, right? So they could be paying a lot more than what they really need to be in order to be able to maintain those locations. So Jeff, I don't know if you have some additional insights here that you want to share before we kind of shift to the next slide.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you can see from this graph here from our market research, that profitability is going down the fewer gallons you're using on your throughput. However, the one thing that Brent called out there is your maintenance cost isn't going down. You still have the same amount of equipment, you still have the same amount of issues. Repair techs costs are going up, so we're trying to provide you guys with some of the same information that can make you have better visibility across all of your locations and make those better decisions for your profitability, even though if you're losing throughput because of all these other things that Brent had just mentioned.
And Jeff, I think another question that I would always ask is, it's one of the things we ask to a lot of our clients is what would be the value of 1%, right? We're going to share that value with you at the very last of this, but as you're thinking through the presentation, right, you're kind of putting yourself in the shoes of how do you actually drive additional volume. We're going to be talking about the technology and how you can leverage that technology to really improve your throughput by 1% or greater. So we see most organizations that use this can improve the throughput by 3 to 4%. But what if you could just get 1%, right? At today's volumes on the average C-store, that's still a significant opportunities across these organizations. So Jeff, I don't know if you want to finish the survey question there.
Yeah, absolutely. So the poll question was, how long does it take your staff to identify and address equipment issues like flow rate, nozzle down issues? The vast majority of you said it was 4 hours to 1 day, and the rest of it was 2 to 5, or a quarter was less than 4 hours. So you're doing a pretty good job of less than 1 day to be notified. The next step is how do you resolve that issue, the time to resolve. So as we go through, keep these things in mind, that time to detect is one measurement, but then time to resolve is another measurement, and how do you go about resolving it and getting your operations back up and running.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jeff. And if you think about it today, like what we hear from a lot of customers and even opportunities is that kind of the current state of the industry that's not leveraging technology, they're really being notified of these issues by what we term the angry customer notification method, right? So they're relying on a customer to come in, find a bag nozzle, find a slow flow dispenser, walk inside the store and complain to the clerks, right? So there's that delay that happens between that notification and then the reporting from the clerks. There's also probably a large percentage of customers that may visit that location before they ever actually go inside and notify the clerk of the issue, right? So that's further extending the downtime of that equipment or the ability to be able to correct that issue. So as we kind of look at this, Jeff, maybe you can share a little bit about what that future state might look like by leveraging technology.
Yeah, absolutely. As you're going to hear going through this presentation, there's a lot of different data points, a lot of different decisions that can be made. And so we're wanting to take all this data, like I said before, and give you a single pane of glass that you can see where your exceptions are, where you can do better, where you're doing good. But then at the same time, take automated workflow, because the worst thing you can do is drown by data. There's so much data out there. If you don't have the means to have any automated workflow or filter up to the top of your exceptions, you're not going to be able to make those improvements and move forward and increase your revenue and profitability. And I want to just give one of my own personal experiences on this specific issue here that Brent mentioned. I was one of those angry customers. I didn't go into the store. However, I went to 2 different locations of the same brand, and both of them had over half of their dispensers bagged out. So, I needed fuel. Usually I would just wait. I needed fuel. I went to a different brand, and, I'm a big brand loyalty person. And, going to this other brand, I've never thought about going to it before. Well, now I went there. I had a good experience. The, store was clean. I actually went inside and bought stuff. So, now, that new brand just got a new customer because, their image of, the storefront, but also all of their dispensers were up and running, where the other brand has notoriously always something wrong at one of the dispensers. It's just it continues to grow. So I'm a living example of what we're trying to help you guys prevent from going with all these systems going down.
Absolutely. Great example, Jeff. And at the end of the day, right, the core benefits we're really talking about here is reducing that frequency and duration of these events, right? Real-time notifications, you see these issues a lot quicker. than waiting on that angry customer. And overall, right, we're talking about improving the throughput at your locations, right? So we mentioned what's the value of 1% for you, but what we see with clients that leverage this technology is they see a 3 to 4% improvement in their throughput by having better visibility and more real-time visibility of these issues, right? So at the end of the day, right, you've got happier customers, your brand image is improving for this. So there's a significant value, and we're going to show you on the subsequent slides here some examples of where we've actually done some research with existing customers, with opportunities we've dealt with, and some of the findings. So it's not just about the reporting that comes out for you to trigger those events. It's also about the analytics that you can actually gain from the data that you're capturing for flow rate and nozzle down events. And we're gonna share some of this for you as well. And so the work that we've done with a number of our customers, some of the things that we found, right? And this is really data that can be critical to help you kind of optimize these processes longer term. And so what we're finding is really that there's most fill ups are less than 3 minutes in length, right? So they're on your site, they're off your site fairly quickly, right? Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, I was going to say, and Brent, with that, less than 3 minutes, it's a finite short amount of time to capture as much data as possible, whether it's the transactional, the sales data. We're talking about flow rate here, nozzle down, if it's, if the nozzle isn't working. So that finite short amount of time, it starts to multiply, but it's, critical to be able to capture that data in real time.
Right, certainly. And then when you look at it as well, what we're seeing is that the average transaction time is about, there's about 15 minutes between transactions there, right? So we're looking at ways to actually, increase the number of transactions that are occurring at the location, right? So if they're filling up faster, you can have more people filling up there, at any given time. So could they have, less time between transactions for this, or the volume of those transactions being larger?
Yeah, absolutely. At 15 minutes, in between each transactions, you're getting 4 transactions an hour. Multiply that over your, hours of operations. That's not a lot of, data to come in there. So how can we get more transactions inside of that time frame? Faster flow rate, larger volume of transactions. Instead of getting a 7 to 10 gallon, now 15 to 20, depending on the type of vehicle you have. So capturing that data is extremely important because it is a finite time, like we had mentioned, 3 minutes, not a lot of opportunity, and being able to have more data to analyze this over the course of time is, going to provide you better results.
Absolutely. And one of the things I thought was extremely interesting, and something that I haven't seen out in the industry before, is that with this analysis, some of the things that we're seeing is that for every 1 gallon per minute improvement or decrease in flow rate, that has either a positive or a negative impact of a half a gallon to 1.4 gallons on every transaction that's occurring, right? So there, when you think about flow rate, there's certainly a value to having visibility and to be able to action on that to improve flow rate and improve the total gallons, right? So that's driving up your revenue at your locations. That's helping you control the cost around how do you respond to these issues, really leveraging actionable analytics to be able to understand when to dispatch and how to dispatch. So a lot of great information for that.
Yeah, and not only the flow rate, are you able to get more transactions in that time period, but the transactions, like I said before, can be greater, whether it's a slow flow, somebody doesn't fill all the way up and they go on to the next location, and because they don't want to sit there and wait 20 minutes to fill up their vehicle. So being able to maximize those sales, but also maximize your opportunities in that 15-minute window and shrink that. Real quick before we go on to the next slide, Brent, let me read the poll results. So the question was, how valuable would a system be that can automatically monitor flow rates and detect issues before they impact the customer? And almost everybody answered this: extremely valuable. So you see the same thing that we see, once again, to have some type of system to notify you before you get that angry customer coming in, and you can speed up your time to detect and also time to resolve any issues, and keep your operations at a maximum level.
Appreciate that, Jeff, and you're exactly right. I mean, what we see across customers is this is something that's very, very valuable. And one of the things that we do is that we work with our existing clients, right? If there's an interest in leveraging this technology, or with opportunities that, we come in and we can assess kind of how they're managing their business today. And so that what we're showing you here is we actually have some examples from a case study that we did recently, where we were looking at an organization that, they had diminishing flow rates. So the graphs here are actually showing the transactions that are occurring, the flow rates that are occurring at the location, and the transaction volumes, right? Because at the end of the day, what you're really looking at is when your flow rate starts to diminish, at what level does that actually start impacting the volume of fuel that they're purchasing at your location and the number of transactions that they're purchasing there, right? So what we were looking at is a situation where the customer did not change the nozzles out at the location. And what you can see is a direct impact on the overall volume that's being pumped. So you can see that volume diminishing over time with that trend line. So showing kind of highlighting the value of the fact that if, by changing those filters, which we'll show in a separate slide here, what that value is. But Jeff, you want to share some of the analysis highlights and findings there would be great.
Absolutely. So, one of the things that we assumed here is the flow rate does not change, or there was no remediation over the 6-month period. So it continues to diminish over that 6-month period. And during that time, you would have lost 11,000 gallons per dispenser over that 6-month time frame if you didn't change the filter in here. So a huge volume impact of losing the possibility of those 11,000 gallons of sale. And the other piece of the data that I thought was actually interesting in here is that the flow rate can drop within a 2-day window. So it could be fine, and then just drop quickly, and that's just that breaking point of that filter. Of once it gets clogged, it dramatically slows down that flow rate in there. So it's key to actually look at this over a course of a period instead of individual snapshots here or there, because you can miss that, and you might have a week in there before you actually are going to detect a slow flow from the filter issue.
Absolutely. And this technology that we're talking about, right, what this is going to do for you when we talk about that real-time notification, you have a dashboard for this that's going to give you those highlights of which specific meters and fueling positions are below whatever standard set point. So let's say in this case, we were looking at any meter below 6 gallons per minute, but it's all configurable for the clients for it, right? So you have that real-time notification, you can action upon those items. And then like we were talking about, we'll have the opportunity to help you kind of optimize that longer term. And so we mentioned on the previous slide, the impact for a customer that does not change their filters out at the location. So what we wanted to do here is kind of show you the benefit by taking faster actions on changing the filters, addressing the slow flow issues at the location. So in these examples, right, we've got a couple of fueling positions at each of these sites where over time you could see the diminishing flow rates at the locations, and then the customer actually changed the flow rate or changed the filters at the locations, and you can see that not just the flow rate is actually increasing over the subsequent time frame, but it's also increasing the volumes per transactions that are happening. So that benefit that a customer is getting, right, that kind of leads in to what we were talking about earlier, that 0.5 gallon to 1.4 gallon improvement that you're going to get by improving that flow rate, right? So all of this data supports what we're actually physically seeing through these customer examples, and what a client could expect at their locations. But again, like we mentioned, we can come in and do a detailed review just like what we're showing you here. And Jeff, maybe share a little bit of the analysis of the findings here.
Absolutely. So you can see the purple arrows on both of these graphs was when the filter was changed. So we're assuming that the flow rate stays constant post filter change, which you can see it did in the data we have in there over a 6-month period. So that resulted in a 10,000 extra dispense per dispenser over that 6-month period. So once again, on the last slide, you lost 11,000. Here you gained 10,000. So a huge swing between changing and not changing the filter. Understand, there is a cost to it. But you can also see on the graph that the filter change increased the flow rate by about 10%, a huge increase. That going back a couple slides before, we talked about getting more transactions in that time period, but also at the same time getting larger transactions. So the customer is going to stay there and fill up their tank instead of moving on to the another location because of slow flow.
Perfect. And Jeff,
And
maybe you want to share the results of
the results, yeah,
survey?
absolutely. So the poll question was, how do you handle filter changes? About a little bit over half has reoccurring schedules. Another large chunk is when the customer complains. So a lot of you guys have the customer complaint piece of it or a reoccurring schedule. But this real-time data we have here, we can get you into more of a proactive measure, so you can start to see that your filters are getting clogged. If you look at the bottom graph, you can see the filter, the flow rate starts to drop off there. So we can get you ahead of the curve, but also you'll pinpoint what filter needs to be changed, so you're not going out and changing all of the filters at once if you don't need it. And you can, if there is an ad hoc customer complaint, we're going to get you this data before that customer can ever complain to the site, and then you guys get notified 2 days later, day later, whatever your frequency happens to be.
Yeah, that's a great point, right? Over 59% of the surveys here said that they're doing it on a reoccurring basis, right? So, certainly technology can give you that visibility, more real-time visibility, not just to which ones need to be changed, right, that are below a standard, but which ones are trending so that you may need to change them out in the future, right? Because you just don't want to be changing them and then being, at back and forth out of the sites fairly frequently. So you can leverage that data to make better business decisions, to help you kind of control the cost of how you manage that. And maybe, a segment of the ones that you're doing on that schedule basis, you can basically do that a little bit more proactively to drive additional value at your location. So the insights that you can gain out of technology can help you make those valuable decisions. So let's move over into kind of the equipment downtime or the nozzle downtime events here. And again, what we've done with this is leverage kind of real client data or these opportunities where we've come in and we've done surveys across clients that have been interested in this technology. And so some of the things that we've seen on there is that that about 20 to 30% of the facilities have a nozzle down for 2 days or longer. Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, I was going to say, with that data, Brent, it gives you the opportunity every day to be very proactive. There's a lot of nozzles down. That's a large number of facilities over that for 2 days in every month. So being able to have that data and be proactive and get ahead of the curve gives you a big opportunity. Going back to your 1% improvement, you can see you can actually get even a better improvement on the nozzle down piece.
Absolutely, yeah. And it, recently when we had the Southeast Petro Show, one of the things I did when I was driving down to that is I was looking at the stations I passed. It was pretty interesting, right? I actually looked at about 19 facilities, and over 50% of those had bag nozzles, right? And what I found is when I got into more of an urban setting, I was seeing that not just that there were more frequently issues at the locations, but also the number of nozzles at each location that was bagged was actually increasing, right? So it not only solidified, but really kind of showed what we were seeing in the data. But just like I think what you guys mentioned in the earlier part of the surveys was that we were seeing the average amount of downtime for these nozzles. Now this is measuring true downtime. It's not necessarily the reporting of that issue. How long it takes to be reported, but we mentioned before you could have events where it takes a while for that customer or that store to actually report it in. So what we were seeing in the data is the average downtime was about 6 consecutive days of nozzle downtime in this. And really, if you kind of go back to what we talked about initially, is how do we help you kind of reduce that duration, right? What would it look like if we could cut that down to 3 days or 2.5?
Yeah, and all the data we have that from this study, everybody was reactive. Nobody was looking ahead, trying to do real-time data, getting out there. It was a lot of it was coming from the store called, angry customer was how they were being notified. So it does make sense. It would be a 6-day consecutive downtime to being able to shrink that, of giving you that data remotely, instead of having to have somebody manually tell you, whether it's through an email, phone call, or some other means.
Absolutely. Yep. And then one of the other things that we learned out of this is that, that every day, that like for a regular nozzle, right, we were seeing that the average throughput of that was about 275 to 375 gallons. And that's a lost revenue opportunity that were impacted by those nozzles being down. So certainly a significant impact on that. But Jeff, anything you want to add on that?
Yeah, I think the 375 gallons. Then if you add in the flow rate numbers we had before, these are material impacts to your business. What increasing your revenue, but also helping you control the cost, being able to give you the data real time, like we keep mentioning, and also pinpointing down to the specific issue. So once again, you're sending a tech out there to fix something, exactly what nozzle is down, what fueling position is down, and so that speeding their time up to get you back up. The time to resolve is being shrunk in there because they're not spending as much time trying to figure out what's wrong on site and just showing up.
Absolutely. Yeah, and again, keep in mind, I mean, really what we're trying to help you do with notifying you a lot quicker these issues is helping you drive additional revenue at your locations. And then again, having more actionable data so that you can help kind of control cost of how you calibrate, how you change filters at the locations, how you update your maintenance processes to give you more actionable data points there. Perfect. And just again to give you a couple of examples, again, real client data and opportunity data that we work through is that in these situations, right, these are showing events where they had fueling positions that were down at the locations and the volume that was actually flowing through during those events. So you can see after that repair was made and that nozzle was brought back into service, how the throughput at that locations or at these locations actually jumped pretty substantially on it, right? So, again, frequency and duration, how do we notify you? How do we surface these type of issues for you quicker so that you can take action and minimize those total number of days of downtime, right? I think, there's really not a technology out there today that would really help you resolve every one of these issues, but they can give you a lot better view of what's actually happening and help you reduce the overall impact of that. And Jeff, maybe if you'll share the findings of this as well.
Yeah. So, looking at the data, one of the things we, were able to determine that, there's a huge gallons of missed opportunities in here by having these nozzles down over the course of, the month. So about 9% of the nozzles were impacted over, a month time frame. Whether that was one location or multiple locations, it does add up to that, potentially 75,000 gallons of lost revenue for that, that month. And then once again, if you start adding this into the nozzle, the other nozzle down piece we showed you, the flow rate piece we showed you, it does have a big impact. And to Brent's point, it's not everything's going to give you all the data, but we're honing in on some big numbers here that can help you improve your revenue. And this pilot that we did here is extremely interesting with the loss potential of gallons from nozzles down. And once again, we are able to point down to the specific nozzle and fueling position, so we're able to help you guide your technicians out there to the right location and the right fueling position to make the repair.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. And then, if we think about this from insights, right? We've talked a lot about the ability to be able to drive additional revenue, just additional margin, right? To help you continually drive value across your supply chain, right? So we really in this view, right? We're really talking about the revenue drivers that we can provide, on the flow rate problems and nozzle down problems, right? There's a significant opportunity in that aspect of it. Your operational cost of what we've kind of talked about by better visibility. All of those are ways to kind of help you, not just on the initial onset of using the program, but also further leveraging and optimizing that longer term with the data that you're actually capturing, driving up and improving the overall satisfaction of your customers, your overall brand image, really a strategic move to be able to help kind of drive additional volume across your locations. So all of those aspects are things that help you achieve better results across your fuel supply chain and at your sites. And Jeff, anything else you want to add on this one?
And other than it's a wide platform that we're talking about and bringing everything underneath one umbrella to give you whether depending on what department you're from, but giving all of your departments the visibility to see all of these different pieces.
Yeah, absolutely, right. Because it all ties together, right? It's not a most companies are very siloed, but if you can break down those barriers, there's a lot of opportunity for shared synergies across groups, and that helps you better operate and drive value across your organization. So we mentioned early on is, what's the value of 1%? So again, as we talked about those values and those insights, right? Tying all of those things together with that broader platform is absolutely critical, right? Because it's not just the store. There's variance issues, there's hauler issues, there's the storage and the testing and the compliance issues. And what we've really been talking about today is really the meters, the dispensers, and the customer impacts, right? So it all kind of comes together in a holistic approach to help you kind of better manage your organization. But the overall value, right? If you kind of think about this, the average C-store that you see out on NACS is about 1.1 million gallons a year. So if you can get a 1% improvement there, it's about, it's an increase in volume at your locations of about 11,000 additional gallons a year, or a $38,000 improvement, margin improvement for your location. So that can, at one site, that's fairly significant. But if you compound that across larger chains, the value is growing substantially, right? So, hopefully we've kind of shared that with you guys on just the overall value of what you can gain from this visibility and these notifications. And Jeff, maybe kind of talk a little bit about optimizing further, the ability to be able to leverage optimization across this.
Absolutely. So the 1% can be made up of multiple different means across your operation, whether it's predictive maintenance and having actionable, measurable analytics down into your maintenance and tech vendors, whether it's inventory optimization on the fuel ordering, reducing storage costs. The last thing you want to do is have, buy fuel at a very high price, and then you have to drop the price and you lose your revenue there. Or even targeting promotions, being able to drive more customers to your locations by some type of promotion inside the storefront. And then pricing strategies. There's a lot of different pricing strategies out there for fuel, but now you're going to be able to have that data to maybe change your whole business model of how you buy fuel. And get better pricing and better forecasting, on-demand ordering, and then automated reporting, whether it's daily reporting, hourly reporting, every 10 minutes reporting. Just getting all your data and getting it into the right hands at your company can drive those efficiencies and optimize your workflow, your revenue, your operations, and all of those things can add up to probably a lot more than 1% across your enterprise of operations, whether it's just C-store or whether you're into the hauling side of it also. But ultimately it gets down to what is the customer experience and getting those customers as repeat customers coming back and having brand loyalty in there, and then driving your profits up.
It's very interesting, right? Because we learn a lot from our clients as well. And what we were finding is more real-time data. Customers are already leveraging that sales data, that transaction level data, to make better decisions on how they price the fuel, how they buy the fuel, right? How they perform preventative maintenance. So all of those are value adds that, just thinking about how you further leverage technology and the data that technology provides to you to look at it holistically across your business, right? It's not just the site level, it's not just compliance, right? It stretches across all these different aspects of the fuel supply chain that can be leveraged within an individual functional group within an organization, or how it's better leveraged is cross-functionally across the organization and even externally out through your vendors, through the support systems, the regulators, right? There's so much that can be leveraged to help further optimize how you run your business. And successful, what we see with customers that are leveraging it to the highest extent is they're gaining the largest value across all these different areas in how they're leveraging the platform. And we're going to turn this over to Paul now. And I know that there was a number of questions here, so we look forward to kind of working through your questions with you. So thanks for everyone's time.
Very good. Thanks, Brent. Yeah, we did have a number of questions that came through, so we'll try to answer as many as we can in the time that we have left. So the first question is, what method are you using to monitor the fuel system?
Yeah, so Jeff, I'll tie it in, and then if you want to answer any of the other ones.
Okay.
But yeah, ultimately what we're doing, we're connected to all of these tank monitors out at the locations. That's one of the primary connections where we're getting ATG related data from your site in variable increments. Most clients are pulling once an hour, but we pull anywhere down to 5 or 10 seconds. So we give you very granular visibility on what's happening. That's the first step, right? We need ATG connectivity to understand, the inventory shifts at the locations. But then in order to get to the flow rate and nozzle down, we need transaction level data. And transaction level data can be achieved in a couple of different ways. I mean, one of the ways would be an ATG that has an electronic dispenser interface module, an EDIM device that's connected to your forecourt controller. So we would get transaction level data there. Not every location has that. You might see that in New York or California, and then it's pretty much customer specific after that. But if you don't have that, what we would do is we can accept a feed from your back office PC, from your back office system like PDI. We can accept a bulk export of that on a schedule basis, or we can actually tie it in from an export out of your POS. And that would give us the necessary data points that we would need in order to be able to do flow rate and nozzle down reporting for you, what we've shown you here today. But great question.
All right, the next question is, how important do you think it will be to optimize station operations and customer experience as fuel volumes potentially continue to decline?
Brent, I'll take this one. I think, as we showed you going through this presentation today, that there's a lot of different possibilities to optimize. But also at the same time, if you don't optimize, you're going to lose customers, whether it is nozzle downtime, equipment downtime, flow rate. There's a lot of possibilities to impact that customer. And if you're losing the possibility to sell more fuel, you're losing the possibility to get a customer inside the storefront. So your overall revenue is going to continue to decrease on both sides of the operations. But at the same time, your costs are still going to continue to go up. I was in the industry, Brent was too. We know the cost of service techs are increasing. We know the equipment's increasing. Every labor is increasing. So as those items increase, you have to get more efficient on the other side of the operation to drive profitability, so you can cover those costs. And less opportunities just means the higher impact it would be if you could increase your profitability on the fuel side of it and get more fuel through your through the throughput.
Great points, Jeff.
All right, the next question is, does your dispenser algorithm have the ability to distinguish between flow rate by transaction?
Yeah, absolutely. So we not only flow rate by transaction, right? So we can tell you what the flow rate was for each individual transaction that's occurring at the location. But what differentiates us from a lot of other companies that are out there is we also give you the ability to be able to filter out noise that might be coming from transactions. So an example of that is going to be really when a customer comes out, they're filling up, they choose to go inside the store while they're filling up, it cuts off, right? You've got that extended pump time, or maybe they come out, they pump a couple of gallons, realize they picked up the wrong nozzle and pick up a different one, right? So that's noise that customers deal with typically in other systems that they're able to filter out with our technology for it. So not only can you get that individual transaction flow rate, but you can also get that as a broader view as well with reducing the noise. Some great questions here, though.
One more. Is there any interface with Service Channel or Solve One or any of the other dispatch services?
Yeah. So, Service Channel obviously is a large, work order maintenance system. We have a integration into Service Channel, so we're able to push and pull data automatically between the two systems. And as far as Solve One is one of our partners, so we do have an interface with them to share data back and forth there in our system, and we share information in their system. And there's other dispatching services, the same thing, that we're partners with, and or we're have an API into various different software. So if you have a specific question, we'll be following up afterwards with a thank you email. You can reply back and get some more information on that.
Hey, and Jeff, I would just add to it. I mean, this is just one example of the exceptions we provide, or two examples of exceptions. But any exception that triggers through our systems can be automated into Service Channel or other CMMS softwares. So it's minimizing those touch points for the client into the actions. And then, we do have customers that are leveraging that today in full scale.
So one more question here. How do you deal with seasonal change in the spring and fall when the flow rates can go from 9 to 3 gallons per minute quickly and bring your site to a halt?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question, right? I mean, with the data, we mentioned the fact that you can see kind of real-time data of what's happening in the flow rates, but also, we're capturing all of those flow rate events where you're seeing those, and that's a great point, right? If you've got expansion and contraction of the lines, when you look at this on an average basis, right, those are situations, right, where you're looking at that data, you actually see the average flow rate, you can see the real-time flow rate. We give you in what we call our intrinsic flow rate, which will give you kind of a 3-day or a 90-day view. And a lot of our algorithms in that will take into account those seasonal changes, so that if it's a low throughput dispenser or one that's kind of plagued with those type of issues, it would give you that visibility to make the right decision on the dispatch. And we can include that type of data within the exception reporting as well.
Titan Cloud just wants to personally thank everyone who attended this session. And again, we've got 2 more sessions, so we hope to see you again. Thanks very much, everybody.